So WIOCC, West Indian Ocean Cable Company, has been working with UbuntuNet. We've been sponsoring their events, and we'll continue to do this because we believe that we are all there for the development of Africa. And WIOCC is owned by 14 telco from 14 African countries, and it was put together to invest in easy submarine cable system, and we got debt financing from World Bank and other 4 development banks. And one of the key objectives, and this is why they wanted to be involved, is in order to make sure that the capacity on EASY is available on open access basis, and it reaches the end users at very minimal or at the lowest possible cost. And we've seen this since EASY was launched last year. The price of capacity has come down drastically, and therefore what we are seeing is that by partnering with people like UbuntuNet, Africa Connect, yesterday they made a very good presentation. But what I'm seeing is we are not working in collaboration. And I think because our aim is the same. Like next week we'll be presenting to the World Bank and other institutions in Europe. And one of the things they want us to tell them, after we gave you all this money, more than $100 million, what have you done for the Africa? And so by partnering with UbuntuNet and other organizations that aims to make access to the African population, then we will be able to achieve these goals together. And then, so WIOCC is the largest investor in EASY, owning 30%. And I'll show you the 14 telcos. Yeah, so we EASY has 9 landing stations in east coast of Africa, and the shareholders from Libya all the way to Lesotho. And within the shareholders themselves, they have built terrestrial network that we can use and have one-stop shop. One of the partners that you are working here in Kenya is from Kenya, and who are also sponsoring this event. Okay, now there's a lot that has been done in Africa in terms of connectivity, and I'll tell you how WIOCC is playing into this space. We said earlier that WIOCC is the largest investor in EASY system, running from Cape Town, from Durban all the way to Red Sea. That cable has a capacity size of 4.7 terabytes. We've this year made strategic investment in WIOCC cable system that is coming into commercial use. Into commercial use next year, early next year. Then we also made another investment in EIG, Europe-Asia Gateway, Europe-India Gateway. And we've made this investment on quasi-ownership basis, not the normal IRU purchases. We are partly owner of this system. And this system going around Africa, this is what we are seeing, why provide a ring around Africa, will be carrying a capacity worth 10 terabytes. As I said earlier, 2 minutes. Yeah, then that's what we've seen in the earlier slide is the ring around Africa. Now, the 14 shareholders forming a WIOCC have within themselves built terrestrial infrastructure. And this infrastructure aims to connect the users, yeah? And this is where we find WIOCC we partner with UbuntuNet, because these 14 shareholders of WIOCC, all the way from Libya to Lesotho, every 3 months, the CEO of those companies sit together in one round table as the investors in WIOCC. and we try to make them work together and share this infrastructure, because there's no point of having so much capacity going around the ring, Africa, then we cannot make use of this, and this can only be used if we can make use of this terrestrial network. You will be surprised to find that moving from capacity from Burundi to Mombasa, it's probably 3 times more expensive than getting you from Mombasa all the way to Europe. And this is what WIOCC is trying to work, and if we can't partner with UbuntuNet and other organizations to make use of this infrastructure, I think that would be a good thing for Africa. And as I said earlier, we can provide a one-stop shop. I'm being told my 5 minutes are gone. We can offer one-stop shop, end-to-end service. You sign only one contract to link the various universities. So, and we will work with our partners here. So thank you very much, and we'll continue partnering with the UbuntuNet. Thank you.
Please hold your questions. There will be good questions. The next speaker is Dr. Thomas Schmid from DFN, the German NREN. Are you going to?
So hello, good morning. I have slides, so I just want to present a few thoughts that I gave an opportunity to speak. What is the role of the NRENs? I mean, looking at Europe, building an NREN can be made in very many different ways, and there is no silver bullet or recipe where you can go just out and say, okay, there's this that you have to do in order to have an NREN. Everybody has to find his own role, what the NREN is doing, what he's supporting. I mean, everybody should agree that the university and research institutes are what the NRENs are supporting, but also we have in Europe many NRENs that also support primary schools, secondary schools, governmental institutions, health, clinics, and so on and so forth. So everybody in Africa that is now in the process of building an NREN somehow has to find his own definition of the role that he wants to do. And I mean, coming to the challenge of competing with ISPs, I think we in Europe have also been through this phase where the ISPs have been bothering us and saying we are actually concurring with their field of business. And it should be made clear to the ISPs that an NREN is a closed user group, and it's actually a big opportunity for the ISPs to foster future clients, because everybody who is going to a university and using the internet later when he's into business or doing other things, he is also very dependent on the internet, and therefore they will be the future customers of the ISPs. Another point, we talked a lot about e-infrastructure, that's also part of the panel today. Our experience is quite often in many projects, researchers budget a lot of things like staff, licenses, computers, and then when they want to start, they suddenly see, oh, we also need a network, we also have to communicate. And quite often this also involves investment in money, so quite often it's not part of the budget to think about networking also, and this is also something that the NRENs should help with the researchers to understand the needs of their projects in regards to networking. Because quite often these guys that do research are not IT experts, so they very often think the network is just there and you just have to use it, which is usually, even in Europe, not the case. So NRENs should go out and make clear to the researchers what is there, what they can use, what is possible. And I think my colleague over there, he already mentioned shared infrastructures work quite well. So building new infrastructures for every new project might be necessary in some cases, but doing it on a shared infrastructure is something that actually is doing quite good. IP and TCP are doing a good job here. And yeah, it seems like a big challenge for somebody who's currently not running a real NREN to come to this step, to start doing an NREN. But the message here is it's absolutely doable. It's not overly complicated. There are all the materials, there are all the teaching materials there. You can learn from a lot of books. You can cooperate with NRENs in other parts of the world, like we do with KENET. And this is something which is really a great opportunity. And I want to restate what Catherine yesterday mentioned. I mean, NRENs that are around for more than 20 years, we are around for 25 years now. We do things quite often the way we are used to do things. But the chance for you really here in Africa is now to reinvent things and do things in a new way that maybe was never done before and come up with new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Our next speaker is Mr. Vallely from CISCO. You presenting, Andy?
I know exactly where it is. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to come to this beautiful country to speak to you. I have 5 very quick minutes to cover CISCO's view on building e-infrastructures, and I promise I'm not going to try and sell you anything. Absolutely promise. Right. This is quite a broad topic, actually, e-infrastructure, building e-infrastructure for the African NREN. And when I was thinking about what exactly I was going to say, I decided that the best way to look at this is to actually look at JISC, the Joint Information Systems Committee in the UK, that looks at how we do research and other things, and how we can implement IT within this environment. And you can see there the definition here. Paraphrased slightly, e-infrastructure embraces networks, grids, data centres and collaborative environments. Thank you. And can include supporting operation centres, service registrations, and Wi-Fi apparently. Oh, Wi-Fi is. Single sign-on, certificate approaches, training and help-desk services. Most importantly, it's the integration of these that defines an e-infrastructure. So, we've heard from other panel members this morning about problems with cost, the implications of what you do as an NREN, and whether or not we should be competing at all with the service providers. I have another thought for you. As an NREN within a country, if you build your own infrastructure and you stay within a country, then why not use a service provider? Because you have no value. You only have value by collaborating collectively as a group of NRENs, which is exactly what the Ubuntu Net Alliance is about. It's exactly what Terina is about in Europe. It's when the NRENs come together that makes them different from a normal service provider. Because unlike service providers, you're not competing with each other, you're sharing. And the community that I work with in Europe for the last year in Terina are a great example of how coming together they achieve much more. And I'm seeing the same community building here. And it's really an exciting time. I'm just going to make sure I get the right room now.
Blue black button.
Yeah, that's the way I'm pointing. It's just a pointer, right? Right. So I look at the services that NRENs traditionally operated, and they were basically infrastructure. They were transport, security, routing aggregation, IPv6, access gateways, many, many more. But the thing about this is that in a lot of cases, the NREN are just connecting places. You're just providing a fast motorway to do things. And that's great, but when you want to then get to the next level of a fast motorway, you've then got to justify the investment that you're asking the governments for. Because you're saying, well, we're only using our 10 gig network for 1%, but I'd like to make it a 40 gig network. I'll just explain why, because you're not actually using it. And my argument has been for some time that actually what we need to do is start adding the other things that make e-infrastructure. So video, collaboration, storage, grid, rich media. In other words, let's start connecting research, because otherwise you're back to being a standard service provider, just providing transport, and that is absolutely no value at all. What we have seen in Europe is a move towards a reduction on public networks. So governments fund the NREN, they also fund police networks, health networks, and their own government networks. And we're seeing in some instances now, they're moving to a public services network, where actually the NREN becomes a service provider, and the transport is provided by the service provider. So in other words, the NREN has the infrastructure and has the knowledge. Why keep paying for other networks? So it's about building an infrastructure that is shared by the other government departments, as we've seen here. There's also a large collaboration going on now with incubators, and I know that within KENET we've got incubators connected to the network, so it's SMEs connecting to the network, bringing the research from the universities into the SME and developing the economic welfare of a country. The welfare, the economic strength of a country is inextricably linked to the education and skills of that country. If you don't have strong NRENs, you don't have strong research. If you don't have strong research, you have weak skills, you have a weak economy. It's all inextricably linked. If your governments get it, they will fund you. Then they will fund you more strongly. So I think the only thing I have left is to say different options on how you provide those services. So just wouldn't be nice if we didn't have some sort of a network diagram in there. You can either provide the services yourself, you can allow your universities to provide the services with the multiplication of the costs associated, or indeed you can allow cloud-based services. And we've heard a little bit about cloud. We've talked a lot about grid and other services that are on offer. And in reality, one thing I would like to say about cloud, it was mentioned a little last night, cloud is really only a service delivery mechanism. It is not a technology discussion. Cloud is about a business operation model. How do I buy the services I want when I want them? How do I stop paying for them when I'm not using them? It is nothing to do with technology. It's nothing to do with technology. We should think of cloud as just an operating model. So with that, I'm going to probably give you a minute or two back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. And then Kevin Chege of KENET, quite appropriately, I guess, for KENET, is going to close this session as far as the presentations are concerned, after which the floor will be yours. Kevin.
Thank you, Duncan. I don't have any slides, I'll just make a few notes now for the next 5 minutes. Okay, so I'll talk about the e-infrastructures, both the REN and African universities, and my perspective on that. So, from my perspective, from the KENET perspective, the role of the NREN in building infrastructure is basically just to create an enabling environment for the universities. The two ways, or the two main things, what I mean by infrastructure. There is the online infrastructure in terms of the services, and there's also what you call, the layer one, the wires and the links that interconnect the universities. One thing, when NREN is being formed, there's going to be a stage where in the first few years of the NREN's formation, you're going to have to leverage on what the local telcos in the country have. And one thing that the NREN will have to work with the telcos in the country, by the telcos I mean the ISPs, is to make the ISPs understand that they should work with the NREN and not really compete with the NREN, because if they try to compete with the NREN, then it's very possible that NREN will not evolve to the state where it's supposed to be. And one thing that has worked for KENET is we try to combine the buying power of the universities. And when the telcos see one large, instead of the universities going individually to a telco and buy 10 MB, 20 MB, if the telcos see a group coming to buy 200, 300 MB, they look at you differently and they see you as a different person and someone they can work with. So that's the role of the NREN in terms of providing and creating an enabling environment and combining all the resources that are in the universities and making it possible for the telcos to work and see you as a real partner, someone they can work with, not someone they should be competing with. In terms of the owning the own infrastructure, eventually, as the years go by, the NREN will be able to own their own infrastructure. In that time, then, which is probably where KENET is right now, building the infrastructure is a bit tricky, because especially in this environment of Africa where we have a lot of vandalism, we have a lot of cable theft, and a lot of competition still from the ISPs. It's a tough stage to be in, but it's a stage where you, as the NREN, will be able to succeed. Just stick at it. It will work out in the end. Also, in terms of the online infrastructure that the NREN should be building, I think it would be wise to invest a lot or to look at open source software, because that reduces the cost of running some of the services that the NREN would like to do. For example, if the NREN would like to provide services like e-learning hosting or web hosting and so on, it would be much more economical to look at an open source solution instead of investing so much in all these very good commercial solutions. Not that they're bad, they're very good, they're excellent. But if the resources could be diverted from buying software and being moved into buying real hardware that can be used for the university, that would be more useful and more engaging with the university, to make the universities see the NREN as someone they can actually rely on to provide a service. For the universities, I would say the same in terms of, I know there's a temptation for the universities to go and implement what they see elsewhere. So they'll go, maybe the few ICT directors will travel and see this university has such a big investment in equipment, and they want to do the same. But what I would say is, sometimes having something small is just enough to get you going until you're able to have the big stuff. And what I mean is, you could be tempted, for example, to buy a commercial solution, or to buy a commercial e-learning platform, or to buy really expensive hardware. But it could be possible that you could get by with investing much less in these really products that you could replace with open source software, with cheaper software, and use that money to build other infrastructure inside your campuses.